Hello students, in this session of chapter number 13, that is organisms and populations, we are going to see the next topic, that is niche. Now in our previous session we have learned regarding the term that is habitat. Now you know that habitat is a place where living organism lives, and niche is the role of an organism in an environment. So niche is a concept of how an organism lives or survives in the environmental condition. So you know that for survival animals need food, and for this purpose they carry out different activities, as well as animals need shelter. So niche is an activity performed by an organism. Now it includes aspects of life of an organism like diet, then shelter, and these organisms are linked with the physical and biological environment. That means the different environmental factors affect these organisms, as well as they interact with other living organism, which is called as biological environment. Then niche deals with the flow of energy from one organism to another. Now you know that in an ecosystem plants are called as producers. So on these producers, herbivorous animals are dependent for their food, and carnivorous animals are dependent on herbivorous animals for their food. So the energy flows from one organism to another organism. So niche deals with the flow of energy from one organism to another. So niche is the role, or it is an activity of an organism. Then in short, or in a simple words, we can call that habitat as a postal address of an organism, while niche as a profession of an organism. Similarly, the term niche was introduced first by the scientist called as J. Grinnell. Then we will see the types of niche. Now the first type of niche is called as spatial or habitat niche, and it is based on the physical space occupied by an organism in habitat. Now you know that each organism requires physical space to live. So the physical space which is occupied by a living organism is called as spatial or habitat niche. Then the second type is tropic niche. Now tropic niche means it is based on the basis of tropic level of an organism in food chain. Now you know that there are different food chains found in the ecosystem. For example, a food chain consists of producers, then primary consumers, secondary consumers, tertiary consumers, and decomposers. So these are the different tropic levels found in the food chain. So the organism or tropic niche is based on the tropic level of an organism in such food chain. Then the next one is called as multi-dimensional, or it is also called as hyper volume niche. Now it is based on the basis of number of biotic and abiotic factors acting on the space or hyper volume of an organism. That means these are the different kinds of abiotic factors and biotic factors. Now abiotic factors like temperature, then light have effect on the living place or the space occupied by the organism. Similarly, other organisms or biotic factors means other organisms also affect the space of an organism. So, such niche is called as multidimensional or hypervolume niche. Then the next one is fundamental niche. Now, fundamental niche means the organism has no competitors in such niche. So, fundamental niche is a niche in which there are no competitors for food, shelter, etc. to an organism. Then realized niche. Now in realized niche, there are competitors for the available resources in habitat. That means in certain habitat, there may be number of species or organisms, and these organisms have competitions. That means the organism will have competition with other organisms for the purpose of food, shelter or light. So such niche is called as a realized niche. So here we have seen the types of niche. The first one is spatial or habitat niche. The second one is tropic niche. The third one is multidimensional, or it is called as hypervolume niche. Then fourth one is fundamental niche, and the last one is realized niche. Now we will see the different abiotic factors influencing habitats. Now the first abiotic factor which influence the habitat in a particular region is temperature. Now due to temperature, there is variation found in the seasons. That means we experience different types of seasons, as well as climatic variations are found due to the variation or change in the temperature. So we will see the ecologically relevant factors showing seasonal variations. Now you know that equator has high temperature, or it is the high temperature region, and the temperature gradually decrease as we move towards the pole, or there is difference between the temperature on plains and on the top of the mountain. On the top of the mountain, the temperature is low as compared to that of the plains. Similarly, the polar regions and high altitudes, that means high altitude means the regions which are very high to the sea level are called as high altitudes, generally the top of the mountains or hills. So in polar regions and in high altitude, the temperature is below 0 degrees Celsius. Then in tropical desert, you know that deserts are the region where temperature is more than 50 degrees Celsius during the summer season. Then in thermal springs, or different kinds of hot water springs are found on land. So in these thermal springs or the region, the temperature is about 80 to 100 degrees Celsius. Then in hypothermal vents, now these hypothermal vents are present at the base of the sea, where different vents are present, and from these vents hot water along with minerals come into the sea water. Then in hypothermal vents which are present in the deep sea, the temperature is about 400 degrees Celsius. Then the distribution of different kinds of plants and animals is dependent on the temperature. Now you know that in low temperature certain plants are found in the polar regions, while certain animals live in such regions like the polar bear. Then in desert different types of xerophytic plants are found, while animals which have heat tolerance capacity and they can live in scarcity of water, such animals like camel are found in the desert or in the high temperature region. Then temperature affects the kinetics of enzymes. Now in 11th standard you have studied the factors affecting the activity of enzyme. So temperature affects the kinetics or the activity of the enzymes. Now when temperature rises or when there is high temperature, the activity of enzyme decreases. When there is low temperature, the activity of enzyme also decreases. So it affects the metabolic processes or physiological processes occurring in a particular organism. So high or low temperature may affect the metabolic and physiological processes of an organism. Then there are two different terms used regarding the organisms depending upon the temperature. These are urethermal. Now urethermal term means organisms can tolerate temperature fluctuations. That means they can survive in low temperature or they can tolerate a high temperature. So such temperature variations or fluctuations can be tolerated by the organisms, and these are called as urethermal organisms. Then stenothermal organism. Now stenothermal organism means they are restricted to narrow range of temperature. That means they cannot tolerate high fluctuations of temperature. They can tolerate a limited change in the range of temperature. That means not too high, not too low temperature can be tolerated by stenothermal organisms. So here we have seen the abiotic factor, that is temperature, which influence the habitat or it influence the growth of particular organisms in a particular habitat.